What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So I'm sure a lot of you guys have noticed when playing Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown that there is going to be one thing about certain races or driving around in certain classes that's probably going to frustrate you a bit. Guess what that is? The rain, yes, and also the wet roads, which I will touch on that in a second. But do you guys actually think it rains just a little bit too much in Test Drive? Like, I don't mind the rain and stuff. I actually like having different weather and stuff like that in games because it makes it more dynamic. But I would also say a lot of players are most likely looking for probably like an overcast or even something like a really nice sunny day instead of having a torrential downpour, which I would say like the downpour is not all that awful depending on what car you might be running. But if you're anything like me, you're probably going to be running something like a rear-wheel drive vehicle, which we all do know in the rain isn't probably going to be the best decision ever. But then again, you're probably going to like the said rear-wheel drive vehicle that you are driving, which is not four-wheel drive. So you're pretty much like, all right, well, I might as well try this thing out and see how it does. The thing about that though is a lot of the rear-wheel drive vehicles in the rain specifically are just not all that great, man. That is also probably why there's going to be the quote-unquote like four-wheel drive meta thing happening, because a lot of the rear-wheel drive cars, if the roads are even slightly wet, which I've also noticed the roads are kind of damp or they're even wet if it's not raining, which I have to admit is a tad frustrating. Like, you might actually pick a certain race and it does say clear, like it's going to be dry or whatever, but you actually do the race and the entire road in certain areas is going to be wet, which we all do know what happens when you're actually driving on wet roads with a rear-wheel drive car, man. You are basically going to be sliding everywhere, kind of like driving in the snow in Grand Theft Auto. It's kind of similar to that. The thing is though, guys, I do know people are going to be like, well, you can still use the rear-wheel drive cars like they are usable, which is going to be true, but we definitely know a four-wheel drive car is going to be just way better in the rain. This is also why I think people are kind of tired of like the rain events and stuff, or like a lot of the rain events, because you can't run some of the cars in there. Now, a few things I did actually find out about this a bit, guys, though, like let's say you actually want to do a rain event and something like the rear-wheel drive Audi R8. One thing I did find that can help with this is do not run semi-slick and slick tires. Funny thing is, it actually does say in the menu that you don't want to run these slick tires because it's not good in the rain, or it's not going to be good on wet surfaces. Which, funny thing is, the game also warns you before doing that event, like, yo, you should probably change your tires there, bro, or you're basically going to slide off a cliff, so at least it actually warns you. I was noticing going back to original tires on my vehicle does help it a bit actually get traction, which I would say is probably going to make that said car a bit more usable in most of the events. All I have to say is just hope some of the other racers are not driving something a bit crazy like a Countach or something like the SVJ, or you're basically going to be in for a treat. Because fun fact, they do not slide that much, the AI actually go off the road. I actually noticed, guys, if you are struggling in some of the races with the rain in them, and you're like me and you like using a rear-wheel drive car, funny thing is, a lot of the racers really crash a lot, bro. Like, I legit find them always sliding off the road. If there's going to be a tight turn, I notice they actually drive into a wall afterwards. They, for some odd reason, don't know how to brake, but yet they know how to gas through the turn off a cliff, which is kind of odd. Then they take the entire race trying to catch you. That's why I notice if you actually crash out the most annoying racer like the SVJ, then you're probably going to have a higher chance of actually winning that race, especially if you're going to be driving something you might not be the biggest fan of, or maybe you're driving that said car because you can't get the car you want. At least being able to get that race done, get the money from it, then move on from it, and you actually might get like the bonus money from like the task from it and stuff like that, so it is going to be worth doing. Now, I do feel like, guys, I've been basically seeing this everywhere, though a lot of players are basically resorting to four-wheel drive cars, which I did actually make a video about this not too long ago because, well, we can all agree that there is going to be some type of four-wheel drive meta going on, and you know what? I really can't blame people for picking them. These cars are not only going to basically never slide that much in the rain, but man, like, they launch faster, they corner really well, and I would say they're going to be so good if you're actually doing some of the nighttime or even the daytime races with the damp roads, and also having the rain on top of it. Funny thing is though, if you're using a rear-wheel drive car and the actual asphalt is going to be, dry for that matter, then you're probably going to have a good chance of actually winning that event because those cars are still great in the dry asphalt events. But if you actually do some of the events, then you actually have the lovely damp roads in there, well, you're probably going to be in for a treat because the car is still going to struggle to get some traction. Again, though, putting the original tires on that car is going to help a bit. I would actually recommend taking off the slicks or the semi-slicks. That is definitely going to make a big difference in the races. Even if it is raining, guys, do the exact same thing with the tires. When I was doing some racing in the Audi, I was struggling with semi-slicks. I took them off, I put the original tires, like, yeah, you are going to slide a bit, but it's not going to be nearly as bad as it was before. And at least in that same aspect, though, it is going to make the races a tad easier to do if you guys are trying to at least get them done. I actually was testing this a bit with the Aston Martin Vantage, and yes, if you are wondering, I have not bought the Taycan or the Bentley yet. I did end up spending $1 million on the Aston Martin Vantage. Am I upset? To be honest, no. I mean, I actually like this car. I am going to do a video on it here soon, because even though this car might slide a bit in the rain, which is probably going to be a bit annoying, again, putting the regular tires on it does help, but it still does slide compared to something like the Taycan, which is probably why I think a lot of people might not want to spend $1 million on certain cars when you actually have a four-wheel drive car that's going to be the same price or cheaper, and that car is not going to want to fight you the entire race when you're just trying to beat the insane AI that are definitely going to have some fun with you if you end up driving something like a rear-wheel drive. But hey, might as well make it interesting. But I was testing a few things out with the Aston Martin, even in something that's not raining though. Let's say a quick example here is the map is actually going to be dry, or it does look dry, but you're actually going to be seeing like a dampness on the road, or like the puddles around the road, almost like it just rained. This is probably going to be fairly familiar to me because I do live in Florida, so we are probably going to have a lot of damp roads here after we get some crazy storms. But the issue with this though is when you are driving something like the Aston Martin, if you are going to be on damp roads or it does look slightly wet, you are definitely going to know about it. Going around certain turns, your car basically tries to drift or you lose traction. If you try to accelerate hard, you're then going to lose traction. And I feel like it's going to be a tad overdone. Like, don't get me wrong, guys, I do understand a four-wheel drive or like an all-wheel drive car is going to be way better in wet conditions. Like, that is true. We all do know it's going to be better than a rear-wheel drive, but I do know at the same time, though, a rear-wheel drive vehicle is slipping just a tad too much in test drive, which I would say this is probably going to be fairly easy to fix by probably buffing the rear-wheel drive vehicles just slightly in wet conditions. That way you're actually going to be able to run them when the entire road is damp, or it is going to be raining in certain events to where you might join that race and go, oh man, even with regular tires on it, like this car can't do this. And then you're probably going to be thinking, well then I'm probably going to have to save up for a four-wheel drive car, and I most likely just wasted my money on this one because it can't drive in the rain. Like, I can definitely see that being a problem, and like I said, I feel like it is an easy fix though. All they really have to do is increase the traction of the rear-wheel drive cars a bit, or the other thing they can also do, which to be honest I would also like a change in, is to maybe make it so it's not raining constantly all the time when you're driving around and stuff, which I wouldn't say it's going to be a bad thing. I think it's more of the fact of the races themselves, to where if you're doing a lot of races that are raining, you're probably going to be like, okay, well, I might as well go buy a four-wheel drive car for just these events, and then for all the dry asphalt events that are hopefully going to be dry, I will then be able to use my rear-wheel drive car. The other thing, guys, I did actually see Kingdom's video on this as well, which I 100% agree with. Even if that entire race is going to be dry, I actually think it should be. If that race says dry asphalt or something, or maybe it is after a rainstorm or something like that, I really don't think the entire road should be damp and like wet and stuff, even though I do like it. Like, you can have it sometimes, but not every single time you actually do a certain race, or, you know, you're looking to drive a rear-wheel drive vehicle and that entire race is going to be puddles everywhere, the car's losing traction, even though it is not going to be raining. Like, again, though, I do like having small features like that. Like, it's going to be a really cool small piece of detail. I do like it, but not every single event, man. Like, you're going to want to drive different cars. Like, maybe you want to use the Aston Martin Vantage. You don't want to drive the Bentley. Then at least you can have the option to do it. But besides all that, though, I would like to know your thoughts on this in the comments below. What do you guys think about the raining in test drive? Do you actually think it needs to be nerfed? Do you think they should probably buff the rear-wheel drive cars a bit, that way they can be driven in the rain? Would you also like to see the puddles or like the damp road also be a tad changed so you don't constantly see it?